formula for victory in a 24-hour race is complex. Immutable laws of physics multiplied by unpredictable human factors.
Perseverance. Preparation. Teamwork. Patience. Drive. Focus. Concentration. Survival. Tenacity.
Avoid mistakes, add lots of luck, and your chances of winning improve infinitely.
It's a race against the clock.
It's a race against myself.
It's a race of survival. It's a test of character as well as skill. This is an endurance test like no other.
Last year, Kevin Buckler and his Racers Group Porsche beat the new Daytona prototype field to win overall. This year, the fleet of prototypes has tripled, and more than 50 teams in all will take their shot at a place in history.
It's a long way home.
Each year, the North American racing season kicks off with Speed Weeks at Daytona. And for more than 4 decades, Speed Weeks has kicked off with a sports car racing classic. Welcome to the 42nd running of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. We would love to welcome you to bright North Florida skies, but that is not our weather situation. We have cloudy skies, cool temperatures, and a strong threat of rain as we welcome you live, kicking off 15 and a half hours of Speed Channel coverage of an American sports car classic. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. Welcome to our Speed Channel host position just above Victory Lane here at the World Center of Racing. Sports cars have been racing here for as long as their stock car cousins. But while NASCAR has reached the peak of American motorsports popularity, sports car racing has had more of a roller coaster sort of career. The Grand American Road Racing Association a couple of years ago tried to change all that by simplifying the class structure from 5 classes to 3 and introducing a cost-effective new marquee class called Daytona Prototype. Last year, just a handful of DPs were on the grid. It was more of a whimper than a bang as this new chapter in sports car racing opened. But this year, it's a whole different story. We have no fewer than 17 Daytona prototypes on the grid, triple the field in the DP class a year ago. Now, mechanical diversity has always been a hallmark of sports car racing, and the Daytona prototype class this year has no fewer than 6 different engine brands represented from the U.S., Japan, and Europe. We also have some new killer teams like Chip Ganassi Racing with IndyCar star and champion Scott Dixon joining former winners Max Pappas and Scott Pruitt. We have a crew of NASCAR Nextel Cup stars on hand. Robbie Gordon has won the Rolex 24 before. Kyle Petty will make his 5th start. Jimmy Johnson is a rookie, but has Elliott Forbes Robinson as a mentor. Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Tony Stewart have also raced here before. They'll be together on a very, very strong Daytona prototype team. Last year may have been the first year for Daytona prototypes, but it produced a great rivalry. David Donahue and Didier Taze banged doors all season long. Donahue said he's not going to stand for it this year. Well, the season is about to get underway, and we will see. I mentioned Chip Ganassi's powerhouse new team. They will start from pole in their Grand American Rolex sports car debut. Let's meet one of their drivers in the pit lane with Calvin Fish.
Well, Bob, as you mentioned, one of the big announcements during the off-season was the addition of Chip Ganassi Racing to the prototype ranks. They've made an immediate impression here. Scott Pruitt putting the car on the pole. He'll lead the field to green here this afternoon. But a stellar driver lineup. Mexican Jimmy Morales. He's won numerous championships down south of the border. He'll be joined by none other than IRL champion Scott Dixon, turning right for the first time in a couple of years. But no one will forget this man at Daytona, Mad Max Pappas. You came so close in '96. Really wrote your business card that year. Came back to win it 2 years ago. Give us your feelings as this long day ahead approaches.
I'm really proud to be here, represent Chip Ganassi Racing. We are doing an amazing job starting from pole position. And with Wayne Taylor on the side, reminds me in the 1996 days when we had the Taylor-Pappas battle, so it's really good.
All right, Max, good luck this afternoon. A long day ahead for these boys, Bob.
That there is, Calvin. Mad Max Pappas made his name here in American racing at the Rolex 24, and he hopes to come back and win it again this year. Now, I mentioned we have 3 classes in the event, the Daytona prototypes. Now let's meet the second of those classes, the one that produced last year's historic overall winner, the GT category. Last year, it was a beautifully sorted and run 911 from the Racers group that won, but this year they suffered misfortune en route to Daytona, a transporter fire, and more once they got here. We'll talk about that in just a moment. BMW is back with the Prototype Technology Group and a terrific driver lineup led by Bill Arberlin and Big Bad Boris Said. And Ferrari is back at Daytona with no fewer than 4 360 Modenas in the GT class to challenge BMW and Porsche. And we have another Italian brand here. The Trident is into North American racing, making their debut this weekend with a lightweight racing version of their Trofeo Coupe. And there are 2 of them here, along with American Iron in the form of a bellowing Chevy Corvette. Dunlop is supplying the tires. Let's get down to Chris Neville.
Well, Bob, you'd think things would go easier for the Racers group. 2002, they got the GT win. Last year, they got the overall. However, they did sustain that transporter fire this year en route to the track. And the team sustained over $250,000 in damage to the equipment. However, they really rallied behind the situation. They descended on Gila Bend, Arizona. They got the cars to the racetrack. The cars were not damaged. A lot of their support equipment was. They did get here, and they ended up qualifying second in the 66 car. However, due to a paperwork infraction, that time was disallowed. They have to start in the second half of the group. They will not be starting in the top 30 today. You'd think the race gods might be against Kevin Buckler this weekend. However, in the 66 car, he's got an ace in his hand. That card is, this will be the first year he's got the support of a full Porsche factory lineup of drivers. Brian Till?
Well, you know, the Cup guys don't get to do a lot of road racing, Chris, but one of the guys who enjoys it is Tony Stewart. Now, Tony, the power plant may be from the same manufacturer, but it's in the wrong place. How is adapting to this Daytona prototype?
It's not been real bad for me. I mean, I ran 3 years in the IRL full-time and was used to rear-engine cars or mid-engine cars, and you know, this car is really fun. I mean, Max Crawford and his whole crew back in North Carolina, they did a great job building these cars. They're very, very stable, and you know, I think it showed as quick as Dale Jr. and I were able to get up to speed, and I think our quickest laps for the weekend are between the 3 drivers are all within 3/10 of each other. So, you know, I think that we're all very, very comfortable here.
One thing they're going to have to get used to, standing here in pit lane when the green flag falls, Bob.
That's right, and there's a look at Andy Wallace, who is sharing that car with Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Tony Stewart. Now, the third class in competition today is known as Super Grand Sport. Call it an entry-level class, if you will, but they have the possibility of doing very, very well. It's a class dominated by Porsches, and there are some very experienced Porsche teams. There's Craig Stanton, a former winner in the Grand American Cup Championship. Randy Pobst has won his share of North American road racing championships in a variety of classes. And keep in mind, a Porsche 911, although a GT class car, won overall a year ago. Hoosier is the spec tire in SGS, Dunlop in GT, and Goodyear in Daytona prototype. Now the field is on track. As you saw a moment ago, we had a little problem with getting the ball pointed in the right direction, but it appears that the field of nearly 55 cars is getting ready to go. And as they do, let's go up top. We'll start the race with the man who'll be on the mic for the entire Grand American Rolex sports car season, Lee Diffie, and expert commentators David Hobbs and former Rolex 24 winner Dorsey Schroeder. Gentlemen.
Thanks, Bob, and good afternoon to you. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, as you well know, Bob, to get through this 15.5 hours of live coverage here on Speed, you need plenty of stats and plenty of stories, and these 2 gentlemen beside me have in excess of 20 starts here at the Rolex 24 here at Daytona, and this man here, David Hobbs, started in the very first one back in '62. Let's have a look at how they will line up here today at Daytona International Speedway, and with a new qualifying lap record, it is the Lexus Riley, and Scott Pruitt did a marvelous job for Chip Ganassi Racing. In fact, that front row is blocked out with the Riley chassis cars. Fantastic effort from them, and the reigning DP champion, Terry Borchella, starts from 3. We look back at the second page, and the 5 times Rolex winner, Hurley Hayward, yep, he's going for number 6. He is in that top 10, starting from position 9. The GT pole sitter, Johannes van Overbeek, will start from position 16 in the newly formed Flying Lizard Racing Porsche. Then we go back. You see the second of the PTG BMWs there, Nick Johnson driving the 22 machine. And our newly formed class, the SGS class, 28th position is our pole sitter, Randy Popes. We're going to take you through all 53 starters, and David Hobbs, speaking of 53 cars out on this track, traffic will be an issue.
Traffic is going to be a huge issue, and I've never, in all my years of long distance racing, over 40 now, seen such a close grid. 14 cars covered by just 2.5 seconds at the top end of the field. If they all hang together, this block could move through this track all the time. Look at the track. Looks pretty simple, but turns 1 and 2. 2 really tightens up to a nice little right-left kink. Turn 3, you have no camber to help you. Dust picks up really quickly there from the sand. 4 is a very fast left-hander, especially in the dark when you can't see too well. 5 is tight. 6 goes in real tight, and it unwinds as you go up onto the banking and go around NASCAR's 1 and 2. Down to the chicane, about 190 mile an hour as you get there. And 8, on the exit of 8, you've got to be very careful because the dust builds up near the wall.
Right at the top of the show, you heard Bob mention that weather is an issue. It's hardly a pretty picture here at Daytona International Speedway. It's cool, and there is a huge threat of rain. 80% chance of rain, Dorsey, and that's playing on the minds of these competitors.
Yeah, that's what everyone does not want, but it looks like it's going to happen. And take a look at the Porsche keys of the race here. Weather on top, we'll talk about that. Durability, of course, in this division. These new Daytona prototypes are brand new. They're not tested yet. Pit stops have to work smoothly. Traffic is the #1 concern. Can you make it through this race without body contact in possibly the rain?
That's going to really make, if it does rain, of course, body contact becomes that much more crucial.
And we'd like to thank our friends at Porsche for bringing us this first hour of racing with limited commercial breaks, limited interruptions, and we thank them for that. Immediate news from the ground. We understand the number 11 Ferrari has been taken behind the pit wall. Early problems for them, and that's certainly a case in endurance racing. And the 41, the Planet Earth Motorsports Porsche, the Nonamakers, they're in trouble early as well. One of the new class cars, the SGS cars, and their day has begun not how they would have liked it to. Working our way towards the green, and we're very honoured to have Sir Sterling Moss as our Grand Marshal for the 42nd running of the Rolex 24 here at Daytona. An old friend of yours, I know you've seen him a few times this week.
Absolutely. Doesn't look a lot different, looking a little bit older, and of course he and I are two of the only people on the ground who did the very first race here back in 1962, and I can remember him strutting around because he won the class in a Ferrari GT250, a beautiful car.
Well, we're going to show you some of our onboard shots, and there's plenty to talk about with these new cars. There's some fabulous looking cars, the two Howard Boss Crawford Chevrolets. They are marvelous looking cars. The BMWs are back, Tom Milner and his PTG BMWs, and here we go. We are underway with the 42nd running of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Scott Pruitt leads him into the field, and already a pass down into turn 1. And it's Terry Borchella, the reigning Daytona prototype champion, who's not hanging around.
Oh my gosh, don't win the race on the first corner, everybody says, and Terry Borchella went down the inside there. This is that nasty little right-left kink as you come out of that turn 1 and 2 complex down to the International Horseshoe. 180-degree corner, long, easy enough corner, but they all hug the apex, and as the race goes on, they kick up a tremendous amount of sand.
Bad news with that aggressive move at the beginning was he made contact with 2 different cars already before he even got to turn 1, so that's not the way you start out. I'm sure his heart rate was very high right now.
Borchella is aggressive, and he doesn't want to sit around. We saw that many times last year. His weekend has got off to a great start. He's already won the Grand Am Cup race yesterday, and spirits are high.
Well, they've got to be. These Daytona prototypes, as I said, they're all very evenly matched. We've had a very short time limit over the top 14 cars. We've got about 3 seconds, which really for this type of racing is absolutely extraordinary.
There it is, the Bell Motorsports Pontiac-powered Doran, the reigning champion, 6 wins in season 2003, and Terry Borchella determined to get this 24-hour.
Terry Borchella had a win yesterday in a different division, so he's already started out the speed weeks in grand fashion and wants to come away with another win.
The two Howard Boss Crawfords looking good. There's David Donahue in the 58 Red Bull Porsche-powered Fab car, followed by one of our new entries. That's the Michael Shank entry, and there's so much to tell you about these new cars. That's a Lexus-powered Doran.
Yeah, the Lexus, of course, on the pole. Last year they were here, a name badge last year was Toyota. This year they're all going to be Lexus engines, and look for a lot for them. They're showing a lot of power, but of course we're not sure about their longevity for 24 hours.
Doug Goad in the 09.
Doug Goad has Robbie Gordon, the NASCAR driver, driving with him.
And there is the famous 59, Hurley Hayward, the 5 times winner and race winner from last year as well, but a 5 times Rolex 24 winner. And finished second in class last year here. They had some altercations out on track and it cost them a lot of time. They spent too much time on pit road and they feel they should have had a class victory last year. He's fighting for his 6th overall win.
Easily the most experienced driver in this field. Before he started today's race, Hurley's competed 14,635 laps here at Daytona.
and his first win came here 31 years ago in '73.
Problems already for John Heinrichsey.
John Heinrichsey, a very experienced driver, especially in General Motors equipment, Corvettes, Camaros, very, very experienced. One of those guys that could easily last the distance. International Horseshoe back now to the lead. Brian Till's got some information on the Corvette. Brian?
It seems like early in the race, a window net problem, that's what they had to come in and fix. The problem now, speeding down pit lane. You're going to see the 24 car again.
Here comes Max Angelelli, the black and yellow Riley, the SunTrust sponsored car. Angelelli has done a wonderful job so far, and this is such a new program, and he's hounding Scott Pruitt.
This is NASCAR turn 2 right here. Go ahead, Bill.
Absolutely. There's a lot of drafting going on here. Now, will he be able to draft him over the start-finish line? Of course, the Nextel Cup guys are used to going straight on here, but right about here, hard on the brakes, bringing the speed down from about 190 miles an hour to right at the apex, right here, your slowest spot, probably what, 60, 65?
It's a very tricky corner. That's a slippery corner, and some people take that and go straight there and get their braking done. Some people take it as turn 1 and turn 2 as one corner, one big arc through there. It really depends. Oh, as he locks up the right front.
There's that stand on the inside that Angelelli's going through. Scott Pruitt locking up there. You don't want to put a flat spot on here on lap 3 when you've got another 23 hours and 55 minutes to go.
Listen to this Pontiac Riley. Angelelli teamed with Wayne Taylor and Emmanuel Collard. Great driver lineup. Great to see Wayne Taylor back as well. He has formed this team very quickly. They're thrilled to have the support of SunTrust. And it's a pretty nice outfit.
Only 3 drivers in that car, but what 3 drivers they are. Every single one of them tremendously experienced and very fast.
The 93 Ferrari had a spin just a few moments ago. Luca Drudy on board. Here is the replay from one of the Team Arsco cars.
Oh, well, he tried to put his nose in where his nose wasn't wanted. The guy was already there, was committed, was apexing the corner. He tried to go down the inside. A very ill-advised move, even in a sprint race, in a 24-hour race, not to be...
Actually, he's pretty lucky that he didn't do
any damage to either of them.
Yeah, to either. That's right.
And the other guy got away with it scot-free, luckily for him.
The onboard shot that we showed you from the Arsco Porsche. We're going to track those guys as this battle intensifies. Max Angelelli desperate to get past Scott Pruitt, the reigning Trans Am champion and former winner here in the Rolex 24. It's still Borchella up front, then Pruitt you can see up ahead in the Lexus-powered Riley. Then you ride with Max Angelelli. Wallace and Leitzinger round out the top 5.
Wallace is right behind Angelelli. I think Angelelli's being held up slightly by Scott Pruitt here. And there you see in the number 2 car, you see Andy Wallace, one of the most prolific winners of long-distance races. 2 at Le Mans, 3 here, 3 at Sebring. Mind you, Scott Pruitt not exactly come up short when it comes to long-distance wins.
There's actually 2 schools of thought talking to these drivers. Some of these guys think they can run in sprint fashion for the whole 24 hours. Scott Pruitt, on the other hand, said that's completely ridiculous. There's no way your car's going to finish. I'm going to conserve my car and drive it at a pace. And I think that's what he's up to.
Well, you know, he's right, and yet at the moment, modern sports car racing has evolved so much. Here he goes, down the outside. Well, down the inside there, into that turn 6. That's where we saw the Ferrari make the ill-advised move. Scott Pruitt, being somewhat more experienced than the white car there, gave him racing room.
And watch for Wallace. Andy Wallace is right on the back of this car now. You're riding with Scott Pruitt. He gave Toyota its first champ car pole back in 1999, and he claimed Chip Ganassi Racing's and Lexus first pole here as well. Here comes Andy Wallace. You're right on board the Crawford now, and Andy is up into 3rd.
Yeah, Andy Wallace, as I say, very experienced. Of course, Max Crawford also This is really his first foray into big-time car manufacturing. The Crawford's been looking good all weekend.
This is the car that you'll see Tony Stewart and Dale Earnhardt Jr. drive later today. And remember, our coverage here on Speed is live right through until 9 p.m. Eastern tonight, and then we'll rejoin you tomorrow morning from 6 in the morning.
Of course, this Crawford group is a real family group now. Obviously, Max Crawford, who designed and built the car, his wife Jan is always there with the team in the pits. Their daughter is the aerodynamicist, and she is engaged to Andy Wallace. So,
Lock up there from Andy Wallace.
Steady boy, don't go locking him up. You know, Andy from Suburbia, you know, talk all that, you know.
He has been a major part of the development of this car, not only for the two Howard Boss Motorsports cars, but also Doug Goad, Spirit of Daytona. And speaking of Goad, here he is in the 09. And there is the 6, the Michael Shank Racing entry. And Kelly Collins driving that car. Kelly did a nice job in qualifying. He is filling in at the moment for Brent Martini, who was meant to join Kurt Wagner in this, but Martini injured with a shoulder injury. So Kelly Collins jumped on board, and he will in fact join Martini and Wagner later in the year in the other Enduros.
You know, it's amazing how much development has happened in 1 year's time with these Daytona prototypes. Last year there were stubby little weird-looking cars. Now they're quite good-looking cars with the new Crawford and so forth, and they're a lot quicker.
Well, they're lapping at the moment. Oh, second. Whoa!
That's Mike Borkowski in the Mears Motor Coach Multimatic.
That won't go too well without that.
And he's a long way from home.
He's a long way. He's just gone around the International Horseshoe. Oh, it's leaving.
I think it's just grinding the body.
I thought it was fluid, but it's not, is it?
Yeah, it's just actually the carbon fiber grinding away. Boy, that's as far away from the pits as you could ever want to be.
Boy, he just absolutely gone by the pit exit.
You'll remember Mike from last year. He was in the Red Bull Brumos 58. And this gives you a shot at just how far away he is from the entrance to pit lane.
Okay, so pit lane's right here. And he had that go all the way around and a lot further than I can draw to get to where he needs to be. And he stopped it wisely.
He's obviously decided to stop it.
You know, it'd be best to get out, go back and get his wheel back.
Grand American rules allow you to do that.
Now, you know, they can, it used to be a driver would have to fix that out there. Nowadays, the rules are different. They'll come and get him and tow that car back to the pits. Of course, it can cost some time. They'll come with a flatbed and they'll drag it up on and they'll bring it back. He'll be back in the race, but he's going to be way down.
So Mike Borkowski needing some assistance. And at the moment, out on track, Max Angelelli has in fact caught and passed Terry Borchella. Here is the replay of what happened to Mike Borkowski.
Well, you see it. Oh, yeah, you saw the wheel nut fall off there.
Go, yeah.
And here comes the wheel.
So obviously an improperly torqued wheel nut. And then Mike sees his wheel go by.
Well, I wonder what happened to that wheel, because there's not a great big... Well, there is a catch fence there right at the end of the International Horseshoe. And somebody was asking me the other day, why would they have a debris fence down here? It's miles from the track. That's one reason.
Here is the 45 Gunner Racing Fab car, and Gunner Jeanette on board, and later on in this race you will see at the wheel of this car NASCAR Nextel Cup star Kyle Petty, and also Paul Newman. Yes, Paul is back yet again. We saw him race at Lime Rock in the Trans Am Series last year, and he told us, yep, this is it. This is the last one.
Well, that'll give him the youngest and the oldest combination of drivers. There's young Gunner's not very old.
Brian Till, what do you have for us?
Guys, the 21 PTG BMW is in. Now, interestingly enough, this team started two cars with the same driver lineup. Bill Auberland is in this car right now. But they've got some kind of an engine problem. I know the engineer is plugged into the computer, and now they're looking underneath what looks to be the valve cover on this BMW. Not good news for them. The good news is, if there's any good news at all, is there's still a BMW running that the other drivers can get into and score points. The problem is, Bill Auberland started in this car. The points that he gets or doesn't get come from this 21 BMW machine.
Well, that's the risk they take when they start a couple of cars, but once you've driven one and your car's out, then you are out of luck when it comes to points.
New race leader Max Angelelli, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, for the SunTrust Pontiac Riley, leading the way. And to show you how much work, to illustrate how much work these guys have done, this deal came together last October. And they have worked tirelessly to put this together, to do whatever testing they could do with this car. And now Max Angelelli leads the way. On board with Terry Borchella in the Bell Motorsports Pontiac Doran.
giving plenty of room to that lap car as he went around the outside at the turn 6, coming up onto NASCAR's 1 and 2. Trying to stay in the draft there of Angelelli to see if he can get a little bit of a help down this long straightaway to the chicane.
Here's the pass for the lead, real time.
It's coming out of the carousel, the horseshoe back there, gets an acceleration. Taking a look.
Whoa, good braking down the inside there to turn 6. He's given a bit of room there and really takes advantage of it as he goes past.
That was very cautious driving is what that was. They just let it happen.
Well, you know, you've got to at this stage. Look at that time there, 1:48.6. Those times are 2 seconds quicker than last year's pole.
There you go.
After seeing Angelelli in the Cadillac program here in the States several years ago, he kind of disappeared, but now he will be back in force this year with a full program in this Daytona prototype, as well as running Cadillac's new CTS-V in the Speed World Challenge.
I don't see any brake lights on the number 10 Sundress car when he came into the chicane there.
Ooh, smoking out the engine. Bit of smoke coming out the exhaust pipe. That's not a good sign.
Why, the right bank is really puffing hard.
That's not coming out of the car, is it? It's definitely coming out of the pipe, is it?
It sure looked like the right bank, yeah.
And Dorsey, when you say you don't see any brake lights, might like to point out that you do need to have them.
You do need to have them. Of course, his competitors will be calling into their crew and say, hey, get the 10 to stop and get those brake lights fixed. Of course, they don't really care about it. They just want him to stop because he's leading.
That actually happened to one of the Crawfords the other day.
So it's actually happened to me several times. I mean, there's a little plug in the back of the car.
Of course, that's the sort of trick you would stoop to, I suppose, putting no brake.
Absolutely. Especially if he's leading.
Already starting to work their way through the SGS cars, and the 63 has already taken the lead in SGS ahead of Randy Pope. So nice work there. That's Hugh Plum and Jeff Escalette, their car, and that will be a full-time effort this year for Hugh Plum. They qualified strong, of course didn't quite get the pole. Randy Pope's gained that for TPC Racing. But now Hugh Plum out in front in that newly formed class. And of course, the whole scale down, making things more simple, will take another step in 2005, where in the Rolex Sports Car Series we'll have just 2 classes.
The Daytona prototypes and GT. Really, it's a very smart move to try and make it less confusing to the general public. Because effectively what we have at the moment is 3 races on the same racetrack at the same time. We've got a race for Daytona prototypes, a race for these guys, the SGS, and a race for GT. So really look at it as 3 different races.
We have David Hobbs up here in the booth along with Dorsey Schroeder in excess of 20 starts here at the Rolex 24 Hour. If you would like to email them any questions, just go to the link at speedtv.com. Send us your questions. It comes right here into the announce booth. And there's a very important man in motorsport. Chip Ganassi, his car is currently 4th. We'll be back.
Speed Channel's coverage of the Rolex 24 at Daytona is brought to you by Porsche. Porsche, there is no substitute. By Rolex, the watch of achievers the world over. And by Axiom, the global leader in customer information management solutions. Let Axiom help you grow great relationships with your customers. Welcome back live to 8 consecutive hours of live coverage to open the 42nd running of the Rolex 24. I'm Bob Varsha at our host position. Once again, we want to thank all of our friends and great Speed Channel supporters from Porsche, allowing us to bring you this first hour and the last hour of the Rolex 24 with very limited commercial interruption. Now, you might be asking yourself all about 24 hours of sports car racing. If you're new to the series, here are some of the rules. A driver can drive a maximum of 3 consecutive hours before he or she must take at least 1 hour of rest. And no driver may drive more than 15 hours total of the 24. As for the car, the crew can replace everything on it except the engine block that it started the race with, its chassis, or a unibody shell in the case of unibody cars. And the clock continues to run no matter whether we are green, yellow, or even under a red flag. And that has happened in the past here at Daytona. Now there's our race leader, the SunTrust Pontiac Riley, in the hands of Italian Max Angelelli. But you see that right front damage, driver's right that is. Let's take you back a lap or 2 and show you what happened to Angelelli, who finished 2nd in this race back in 1999. He came across Peter Argetsinger in an SGS class Corvette And as we've seen before down there in turn 6, entering the big NASCAR tri-oval, sometimes drivers are watching the road ahead, not their mirrors, and the result can be catastrophic.
Well,
Here's a look
Singer
from
probably
on
looked at
board
his
with
mirror there,
Angelelli.
and he was a long way back, but he caught him up tremendously quickly on braking.
This is one of the things here at Daytona. Look at the closing rate right here, as you see the wreck right in front of them.
I would have thought that Singer could have given him a bit more room. He must have seen him coming in.
Caught by surprise there?
I think he probably did, yeah.
This is a good point. I mean, you don't want in a 24-hour race early on, even if you are the leader, to go dive bombing in on these cars, because you never do know if the driver knows that you're there or not. You cannot put the car in jeopardy by doing that. He could have passed him on the banking just another 100 feet.
Well, that's true. Another few hundred feet.
Well,
got by him anyway.
Angelelli is coming into the pits and Brian is there. So too is Borchella. We're under our first full course caution.
This couldn't have come at a better time for these guys, especially Max Angelelli. He's got damage to that car. I was talking to Wayne Taylor. He had seen the replay, and he said it definitely was not Max's fault, but he had been running a pretty significant pace in the beginning. You can see the damage to the right front. Hopefully it's just body work. Under this yellow, they'll have time to change it, but the question you've got to ask, especially seeing the marks on the right front tire, is the suspension bent? They'll only know when they get back out on the racetrack.
Wow.
A bit inadvisable to do something like that with less than 20 minutes of racing under your belt.
And like I say, with another 100 feet, he could have just easily driven by him on the straightaway. Instead, he chose for the dive bomb in the inside.
Borchella's been serviced. He's gone. Stalled the car just for a moment. He's gone. Cal.
Well, Scott Schroeder's taking advantage of the caution period as well. Back underway. Routine pit stop. Obviously a little nerve showing there with this team. They haven't done this type of racing for a while, but they're used to hopping over the pit wall. Very good crew down here. Meanwhile, let's get further news down pit lane with Brian.
Well, we saw the damage to the tin car up on the right front, but now the guys have lifted off the engine bonnet. They're looking underneath the back, doing some wiring there. So there seems to have been more issues with this car than what we were led to believe. My other question is, why did they not change the right front tire, guys? There's significant damage and marks on it. I would think, especially Dorsey and David, would you guys want to go back out with a right front on this racetrack that you know has had contact?
I want to make sure my right side tires on this racetrack are in very good shape.
We have a problem here.
Both of these cars,
car.
and the 70, which is the Speed Source. These are sister cars. Sylvain Tremblay, who is the Speed Source team principal, the Workscape number 70, come to a stop right alongside the sister car. So a terrible, terrible start to a long day for these Ford Multimatics.
Maybe brought him a wheel and a wheel nut.
Well, there's the wheel on the back of the cart there. Hopefully they can get that sorted as soon as they can. We're going to squeeze in a quick commercial break here and then come back. Courtesy of those stops, Andy Wallace is the new race leader. Stay with us.
Welcome back live to Daytona International Speedway and the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. We are live until 9 p.m. tonight Eastern Time, and then tomorrow morning, Sunday, we'll be back at 6 a.m. Eastern to watch the sun rise together and see the conclusion of the 42nd running of the Rolex 24. Here's a look at our current standings just over 25 minutes into this 24-hour marathon. Butch Leitzinger up front in a Daytona prototype as a round of pit stops continues under the yellow flag. Kelly Collins, substitute driver in that number 6 Lexus-powered Duran, has that car in second place. And Terry Borcheller, who took the early lead, is now third. In the GT class, Johannes van Overbeek in a new team using a Porsche GT3 Cup car. That's technically a Super Grand Sport car, but they're running it in the GT class for its bigger fuel tank and other advantages. Kevin Buckler in the number 66 GT 911 Porsche GT3 RS that won this race overall last year is currently in second spot, with Mike Fitzgerald in third in another pure GT3 car. In the SGS class, Hugh Plum has his Porsche GT3 Cup iteration in first place, ahead of Jean-Francois Dumoulin of Canada and Randy Popes from Gainesville, Georgia. Now, at the beginning of this race, Chris Neville pointed out that due to a technical infraction, not nominating your qualifying driver 2 hours before the opening of qualifying, a number of very quick cars, one Daytona prototype, no fewer than 7 GT class cars, and 1 SGS car had to re-qualify on day 2 and start wherever their time left them, behind the top 30 who were locked in on day 1. you're looking at car number 16. That is the Craig Stanton, David Murray, Tim Sugden entry. A Porsche GT3 Cup car from ASCO Motorsports. They started dead last, and they are coming through the field with a bullet. Now there is the number 2 car that went into the pits and spent a very long time there, and the crew working feverishly. Let's find out more about that story.
Well, Bob, obviously any time spent in the pit lane is time you're not making up on the racetrack, but the number 2 car took that opportunity underneath the yellow to come in, and they made some suspension adjustments. They actually adjusted the push rod on the right rear, trying to, it sounds like we're at a cup race, trying to jack some weight across the car and change the handling of it. They got a long way to go, Bob.
All right, thanks very much. There you see the car on track. Now, we've talked about the pole-sitting car in its debut from powerhouse Chip Ganassi Racing. Let's get out into the pit lane where Calvin Fish has the team principal.
Chip, certainly the Rolex series has gained a lot of momentum over the last 12 months. What made your decision to join it?
I'll tell you, Calvin, it looks like a good formula. You know, when you're an owner in the business, you're always looking for a good formula, one that doesn't favor one team or another, one that has to be able to, you know, be steadily grow. I don't want to be involved in anything that's a Roman candle, you know. I want it to be nice and make a nice growth curve. So to me, it looks like that's a good idea for sports car racing, is why I like it.
Big question mark all week about whether you'd had a 4th driver. Finally, it was Scott Dixon. We thought maybe you'd put your overalls back on again. You were here about 20 years ago.
Yeah, I was, but not when you got guys like Scott that are available to you. You wouldn't want to pass that up. And, you know, Scott Pruitt did a great job qualifying the car. We got Max Pappas, we got Jimmy Morales, and then, you know, you throw Dixon on top of those guys. We're pretty excited.
Certainly see Scott being very circumspect in these early laps. Terry Borsheller dove down into turn 1. A lot of the other guys giving it some argy-bargy. You guys have a game plan you're going to stick to early?
Yeah, I mean, Scott just came on the radio. He said, man, these guys are driving a little harder than I feel like driving right now. You know, he said, we got a long day here, so just settle in. You know, that's the important thing. Settle in. We got their first pit stop of the season out of the way. That's always a big thing, you know. Everybody's a little jumpy, and so we just, you know, hey, way early. We just got to settle in right now.
All right, Chip, good luck.
Thank you.
And the big news is the next round of the Rolex Sports Car Series at Miami's Homestead Speedway in a few weeks' time. We will see a second Ganassi car there with Toyota Atlantic star and a couple of time champ car driver Luis Diaz on board there. And we believe they're going maybe splitting Pruitt and Pappas up over the 2 cars. We'll have more on that for you when we arrive in Homestead. Chris, do you have more on the 16?
Yeah, I do, Lee. That car actually didn't receive a technical infraction this weekend in qualifying, but Craig Stanton actually crashed that car heavily during qualifying, and the team had to go out to a body shop in town and actually have to straighten that chassis. So they missed most of the day yesterday, got the car back out on track, and it looks like it's working pretty well here today.
Yeah, they missed that second qualifying session, didn't they? And they didn't get a chance to try and regroup and have a second shot at it. But this is a very impressive team, and great to see that Mike Borkowski did make it back to pit lane, and he is back out on track. Well, we have heard some problems with Team PTG BMW. Brian Till is in their camp now. Can you update us there, Brian?
Absolutely, Lee. I'm here with Tom Milner. Tom, the 21 car in yet again. I know that you guys are playing a good strategy. You got 2 of them out there. When do you make the call to just go to 1 car and put your drivers in the 22?
Well, certainly not right now. We're playing our cards close here. We don't know what the problem is with the 21. It's an electrical problem. Possibly the battery or the alternator, or could be a bad wire. The car runs fine and then suddenly doesn't want to run. So at this time, both of the cars will be running.
Imagine that, guys. Tom Milner playing his cards close to the vest. Yeah, I can't imagine that. Can you, Lee?
Yeah, I asked Tom earlier in the weekend. I said, it's great to see you back. Why have you come back, or why are you running in the Rolex Series this year? And he said, really, this is what PTG, the Prototype Technology Group, is all about. We are endurance racers. And he said, this is what we would like to do this year. So we will see them throughout the year. Cal.
We heard Chip mention the fact there was a few nerves down in his pit about that first pit stop, and actually one of the crew members got warned by the officials down here that they can have no equipment literally touching the pit wall. That's different in the different series. Some of the guys allow you to sit the wheel on the wall and so forth, and the crew members can't have their foot resting on it. There can be no part of the car that they're going to replace on the pit wall. So a little close call there, but I think really it was a wise move. There's a new team. They don't want to create and ruffle any feathers early on. So good decision as we head back to green.
We go back to green, and Butch Leitzinger in the Howard Moss Motorsports. A lot of people are saying this is the best looking car in the field. He leads us to green, and here comes Terry Borchella.
Boy, right down the outside now. Give yourself a bit of room there.
And Kelly Collins takes the lead down in turn 1.
Nice move there. Everybody, of course, on cold tyres. Don't forget these guys have no tyre warmers and on those slow laps. It's a very cool day. We're looking at ambient of 60 degrees, a lot of wind chill. These tyres cool off. No grip at all.
And there is no tire war here. It's all Goodyear tires. All the cars have the same size. This corner, however, I don't care what tires you have, it is like one ice. None of them work.
We ride with Scott Pruitt. Let's have a listen. Whoa, that's Craig Stanton. The 16 Asco Motorsport Porsche is into the wall, big style.
Yeah.
Oh man, I got bumped.
Okay. He said I got bumped.
He just said
He said I got problems.
I got bumped.
And naturally our second full course yellow. And it sounds like he got nailed, big style.
Well, I guess they're going to do, if they do a hero job here to get that car back in the race, it's going to take them an awful long time. The tyre barrier again, showing their worth.
Yeah. Especially there, you go in there, you're going quite hard. And there's a great big concrete wall behind that tire barrier.
We're working on it.
He wants to get out of there, obviously.
Brand new car, brand new team as far as back in the Rolex series, and unfortunately he's had 2 crashes this weekend, and Craig has been at the wheel both times, and this time it sounds like it's not his fault. The first time he said the car just swapped ends on him unexpectedly. He's had a tough weekend.
I would say that this one looks to me like a bit of a brake problem there on the cold tires.
All right, we've got a couple of angles on this. Let's see what Dorsey and David, let's see what you make of this. Upper left of your screen, watch the upper left. Well, upper right, I should say. He's gone there.
I would say that wasn't being bumped. He was just way over his head.
Real time on board.
Accelerating hard. Decides to have a go down the inside of everybody.
You see the 44, the orbit car kind of ducked and weaved, and Stanton took evasive action, but
here's the bad news. He tried to fight that car and not crash it. He should have just got on the brakes and stopped it way back there. Take a look here at the top left. See, he's got a lot of room, but he's still on the throttle trying to save it.
I mean,
boom.
I mean, yeah, the guy did jog out in front of him, but that's what happens when you try and
particularly in that
win
corner.
the race in the first couple of corners.
Exactly. Like I said before, you just can't run your car into harm's way this early in the race.
Chris, what have you got?
Well, I checked in with these guys down here. Now, they're saying that the Orbit car did get into them and put him in the car. And Craig is out of the car right now. He's checking it over to try and see what type of shape the car is in. Hopefully they can get it back to pit lane and try and get things fixed down here. But right now, these guys are hanging their heads pretty low because of this weekend is definitely not going the way they expected.
No, they tested very well. In fact, they left the Daytona test the quickest in the SGS category, and they had high hopes for victory this weekend. So they sort that out. We're in our second yellow. And Collins pitted, so we have a new race leader. Butch Leitzinger is back on top from Borchella and Pruitt, your top 3. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and hopefully we can get this thing wound up and we'll go back to green, back to racing.
Welcome back live to Speed Channel's coverage of the 42nd running of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. I'm Bob Varsha, Lee Diffie, Dorsey, Schroeder, and David Hobbs are up high. Calvin Fish, Brian Till, and Chris Neville down on the pit lane. We are under yellow for the second time, and there is the reason. That's driver Craig Stanton, who got off the racetrack on a restart in a crowd of traffic and backed it heavily into the tire wall on the inside of turn 3, what's known as the International Horseshoe, on the infield portion of this 3.56 mile combined NASCAR oval and infield road course. Looks like the car is relatively undamaged. Here's another look, top left of your screen. Here comes Stanton, already off the road, on the grass, unable to slow down that Porsche, and he backs it in hard. Fortunately, the tire wall did its job. The car looks substantially undamaged. Now let's go on board in real time with Craig Stanton. Hard to tell from that angle what happened, but that was the result. As Dorsey Schroeder mentioned earlier, in days of old, that car might be out of the race unless the driver could get it back around to the pits by himself. It will now be towed back to the pits. Chris Neville has more.
Well, these guys are actually pretty excited because they don't think too much is damaged on the car. I got a list of stuff damaged, mainly bodywork and some exhaust damage. So they're going to take the car back to the garage, spend some time over there, and hopefully in the next half an hour we'll see them back out on the racetrack.
All right, thank you, Chris. As you see the field lining up behind the safety car, that bright yellow machine in the foreground, that's Mike Borkowski, who lost a right rear wheel and found himself stranded on the infield earlier in this race. They are currently running back toward the tail, 52nd in a field of 54 cars at Daytona. Back live at Daytona, coming to the end of hour one of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Let's take a look at some of the highlights. Scott Pruitt started from pole for team owner Chip Ganassi, but that silver and yellow Daytona prototype of Terry Borcheller, the reigning series champion, wanted the lead early and took it into turn one. He was soon passed by Max Angelelli, working his way through the field in a car owned by Wayne Taylor, a former winner of this race. But Angelelli ran into problems with the lapped Corvette of Peter Argetsinger, sustained right front corner damage. Team had to go to work, and they dropped back to a current 7th place overall and in the Daytona prototype class. Among the other miscues in the hour, there is Luca Drudy, a former GT class winner of this race. He too got contact, turned around backwards down in turn 6. Mike Borkowski found himself with a very different problem as his right rear wheel left the race car about as far from the pits as Borkowski could have possibly been. He wisely took the car to the side of the road. The team went out there, put a new wheel on, and he is back, but running around at the back of the pack. Different problem for Craig Stanton, who got off on a restart in traffic, got backwards into the tire wall, and brought out the second yellow flag of the race thus far. And Stanton, who along with Terry Borcheller won the opening of the Grand American Cup race yesterday, opening of that season, now finds himself headed for the pits to have that car checked over. Let's take a look at our class leaders in Daytona prototype. Butch Leitzinger now at the wheel of the Chevy Crawford, running first in class and first overall over Borcheller and Pruitt, our pole sitter. In the GT category, Fabrizio Di Simone of Italy in that beautiful Maserati Trofeo Light, running ahead of the Porsche of Tony Burgess of England, and Nicholas Janssen of Sweden, now residing here in America driving a BMW. In the SGS class, or Super Grand Sport, Hugh Plum has his Porsche GT3 Cup car out front over Jean-Francois Dumoulin of Canada and Randy Pobst. Let's go to Calvin Fish.
Well, one of the teams that has maybe the strongest driver up in this whole field this afternoon is number 58, Brumo's Porsche, the Red Bull car. And Darren Law, after some stellar performances last year, not getting the results you wanted in the Piggio chassis, but a great opportunity here with Brumo's for you.
Unbelievable opportunity. It's first-class operation. I'm happy to be here. It's been a great move for me.
Talk about the weather. Big threat of rain overnight, particularly. Any compromise on the setup as we go back to green?
Not really. It's tough. We're hoping it doesn't rain, but we're just going to deal with it if it does.
Okay, well, we got Sasha Massa and Lucas Slur in the car, along with Darren, so they've got a good chance here this weekend, Lee.
Yeah, look at Borcheller round up Butch Leitzinger. Terry is stopping for nobody today, no matter how long this race is. So he gets the Bell Motorsports DP back out in front, followed by the Howard Boss car. Scott Pruitt is in third. There's the Ganassi car. And then you see David Donahue for the first time in the Red Bull 58. The two-time winner last year, or the three-time winner last year, I should say, in this opening season for Daytona Prototypes. And David wants that championship this year big style. His teammate we just heard from, Darren Law, very excited to be with the Brumos organization. and we look for good things from this Porsche-powered fab car.
I was just going to say, you've got a lot of engine manufacturers right here on board with the Porsche, right in front of the Lexus, and a couple of Pontiacs up ahead of that. So we've got a lot of engine diversity out here, all of which have been, by rules and regulations, pretty much leveled out. The Chevs have lost about 500 horsepower, and the Porsches picked up about 500 this year. So power very evident. Well, you can see how even they are as they go around that banking, absolutely side by side.
Another interesting point to all that is because of these different motors, they require different transmissions. The high revving motors need tight gears. The Porsche and the Lexus, for instance, has 6-speed gearboxes. Everyone else has a 5-speed gearbox.
And there's the engine manufacturers that will compete, that are eligible to compete in this Rolex Sports Car Series. The GM engine is, if you like to use the term, the generic LS6 V8, and you can either call it a Chevy, a Pontiac, or a Cadillac, and that's why the Bell Motorsports team is, look at this, Donahue starts to round up Scott Pruitt, goes high.
Boy, that was a great bit of drafting, but once he pulled out of the draft, he sort of came to a grinding halt. So the aerodynamics on the fab car just a little bit, well, not quite as good as they are on the Riley, which of course is a brand new car, and has had a year to look at how the aerodynamics work on all these vehicles.
And this is a brand new car that David Donahue is driving. Hurley Hayward and JC France, they kept the 59, the same chassis they had last year, while this one is a brand new one. It's an updated chassis. The car that David Donahue drove last year is in fact the car that Gunnar Jeanette is driving here this year.
And Lee, you mentioned the fact that the Chevs have been dropped 500 RPM. Certainly that'll have a little effect on their power. We're talking to the Crawford team, has really affected their gear ratio selection through the infield. Normally they run first gear through the tight hairpins, and they need about 8,800 to do that. Now they don't have that any longer, 88 miles per hour, excuse me. They only get about 8,200 with the new RPM limit in the first gear they currently have. So they don't have some special gears made up to actually ease that situation for the rest of the season. So right now a little bit of a compromise there. The guys have to, on a clear lap, use second instead of first.
Let me explain that a little bit for the people at home. The Chevrolet engine, the V8, of course, has a lot of, we got a big problem.
And that's the other Arsco car, the other Arsco Motorsport car. That's the 17. Can you believe the day that these guys are having?
He's obviously clipped somebody big time.
Yeah, he's hit something quite hard. We'll get back to that other story later.
Oh, no. For Dennis Arce, he will not believe what's happening to his team and drivers today.
Now that looks a bit like it might be a bit more severely damaged. That right front wheel has got a nasty ding in it.
Well, look here, he's got
which
all the way
could
down.
be that it's damaged the suspension behind that wheel, and it's hit the right rear as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go look at, the right rear tail light.
Is that right rear wheel leaning in at the top?
It's hard to say. He might have got some help. We don't know yet. But that's.
I would say he hit something pretty substantial.
Something blue too, which I think is a guardrail around here. That's exactly what it is.
Our policeman, Dorsey, Schroeder, says, excuse me, sir, is your car painted blue? This is on the left hand of the turn 4, the fastest corner here on the infield. You know, you can hardly count the banking on these cars. It's pretty easy flat out, but this left-hander here is very, very fast.
Here's the replay of the incident as our leader comes by. Oh, no.
Dear.
Oh, yes, definitely guardrail.
That, look at this in real time, because that's the fastest corner on the infield and the scariest corner of the day. Gosh,
I would say he probably did get tagged coming into the left-hander.
Look at the corner workers behind this barrier, have no idea right here. Didn't even know that car was coming at him.
Well, Chris is down in their camp. Let's hear from the team owner.
Dennis, we're in the first hour and you lost the 16 and the 17 car. What's going on out there?
Well, there's a little mayhem going on out there. Both cars have been hit. We're a little doubtful as to exactly what happened to the 17 car, although he is in the wall out in turn 4. The 16 car got hit by one of the Orbit cars and went tail first into the turn 3 tire wall. It's in the garage now getting repaired. And I guess we just got it started. It looks like a kind of a carnage race, and maybe we'll be out of there and back up front while the other guys are doing the same thing later on. I don't know.
Well, we hope to see you guys back out on the racetrack. Back to you, Lee.
Yeah, a guy who's been around this sport a long time as a driver and as an owner and has done great things. It's wonderful to have him in the Rolex series.
I raced against Dennis Arce nearly 30 years ago. A couple of old coots together.
Look at those corner workers, guys. They had no idea whatsoever.
That one just looked at them.
So it's been a rather unsavoury start to the day for the Asco Motorsport team. Meanwhile, Terry Borcella, the reigning champion, leads the way. We'll be back.
Welcome back to Daytona. You ride with the defending champions of the Rolex 24. Once the sports cars leave on Sunday night, NASCAR rolls into Daytona International Speedway, and Speed Channel will be all over it. Friday, look for shootout practice, the Bud Shootout for last year's pole winners and former shootout winners. We'll have practice coverage live at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and again at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, live only on Speed Channel. We are still under green despite that accident involving the number 17 car that got into the wall at turn number 4 here at Daytona International Speedway. Kevin Buckler and the number 66 Racers Group Porsche. What a saga for this team. Just getting to Daytona, they suffered a fire on their transporter in Gila Bend, Arizona. Had to completely change their plans to get their equipment to Daytona. You can tell where they are in the paddock just by following the smell of singed bodywork. But they are out here racing once again, hoping to defend their overall championship in this race and going for their 3rd consecutive victory in the GT class. Let's take another look at the saga for this team. The fire started in the area of the rear axle and basically gutted the bottom of the transporter. But the race cars themselves rode in the top of the transporter and weren't badly hurt. But you can see the damage to the rest of the car, including the driver's lounge. Just look at that devastation. It has been a long weekend, but Kevin Buckler is proud of his team. They were able to get beyond this and get to Daytona.
Got a phone call at 9:30 at night. We couldn't believe it. The trailer had caught fire. We had a bearing seize in the back of the trailer. The fire went completely through the bottom deck. It toasted and melted everything. The smoke damage was incredible. It got around to the top of the trailer. The cars were okay, but they got really majorly smoke damaged. Now the problem is we're stopped dead in our tracks. We have 2,900 miles to go to get to Daytona Beach, and we are dead. So we were working really hard. I knew about where a transporter was located in Los Angeles. I found the gentleman who was in charge of the transporter. He was working in the Midwest. Found him at a Best Western hotel in the middle of the night, woke him up. We made a deal on the trailer over the phone. My wife had to go in early. We had a credit line against the business. We got a cashier's check initiated, and my wife had to actually meet the new truck driver on the side of the road with the check, going to the airport to go down and pick up the new transporter and tractor. They drove overnight to Phoenix. They offloaded all the salvageable stuff and hightailed it here and made it Wednesday morning. Once we got here, when we dropped the back of this tailgate, it smelled so bad. It was the worst case of campfire you've ever seen in your life. Our new mascot, the Phoenix, rising from the ashes, will hopefully be proud at the end of the weekend. So.
What an amazing story. And then, as we mentioned earlier, they failed to nominate their qualifying drivers in time, had to start toward the back of the field, but they are marching forward. And there is the proud owner of Racers Group, Kevin Buckler, former winner of the Porsche Cup, given to the most successful privateer Porsche racer worldwide. Now you're on board with Scott Pruitt in the pole-sitting Daytona prototype from Chip Ganassi Racing, Cup USA Lexus. Now this is Andy Wallace in the number 2 car, beautiful Crawford prototype. There are 7 approved chassis builders in Grand American Daytona prototype racing. 6 of them represented in today's race, a total of 10 chassis engine combinations in all. On board the 09, Doug Goad currently behind the wheel. He is the car co-owner. Robbie Gordon will be behind the wheel. Robbie loves to come back and do his road racing, and he is very quick in this car. Now on board the number 10 with Max Angelelli still behind the wheel. Angelelli finished 2nd overall in this race back in 1999 with Wayne Taylor, who was a former overall winner of this race. And Wayne Taylor this weekend starts his 24th 24-hour race. Now here's a different view, a suspension cam on board the Daytona prototype being driven by David Gaylord. That is a Ford Multimatic, the only Canadian chassis builder in the Daytona prototype class. You watch the rear suspension rockers at work. On board the number 24, being driven by Tom Bambar. the Spectre Works Corvette. Bambard, a driver in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series during the balance of the season. And now we go on board the number 54 Bell Motorsports Pontiac Doran JE4 chassis. Terry Borcheller driving this car very aggressively in the first hour. Reigning champion of the Daytona Prototype Division. Now on board the number 58, a Porsche-powered fab car with the classic Porsche flat six horizontally opposed engine. Basically the same engine being used in the GT class 911 GT3 RSs, making about 435 horsepower. Here's the running order in the Daytona Prototype class across the top of your screen as we watch the battle for the runner-up spot. Butch Leitzinger, a former winner of this race, battling with Max Angelelli. Now let's go back up to the announced position with Lee Diffie, Dorsey, Schroeder, and David Hobbs.
Top 14 cars are filled. The positions are filled by Daytona prototypes, and there is 1 minute from 1st to 14th. Talk about a close race so far.
Well, that's what we thought going in with those incredibly close qualifying times. And here goes Angelelli down the inside now of Borcheller in the 4 car. Sorry, that's Leitzinger's car going down the inside of, and not far behind them now lurks Didier Taze, who came from almost dead last in the 27 car.
Battle of the GM power here. The car ahead is badged as Chevrolet. This is a Pontiac, and the difference is the chassis. Here comes Angelelli. Great braking move. Takes over second spot in the SunTrust Riley, ahead of the Crawford for Howard Boss Motorsports.
I tell you what, Angelelli on the brake.
There's smoke again.
That smoke is still coming out the right bank, but have you noticed on braking is his absolute key thing? I mean, boy, he's got large attachments or something.
He lost the nose with that braking maneuver once already, does he?
I know,
the funny thing about this, these guys are being so aggressive. All you have to do is stay within the lead lap anywhere. It's 3.5 miles around this racetrack. If you're on the lead lap, you got 22 hours to go. You're going to get a caution. It doesn't make any sense to run this hard this early.
Big lock up from David Donahue there, heading into the right-hander. He's able to recover from that. The order is Borcheller, Angelelli, Leitzinger, then Donahue, and it's Scott Pruitt in the top 5 from Didier Taze. Keep in mind, Taze started 31st after failing to hand in their paperwork for qualifying. He's flying.
Back live at Daytona, there is the defending championship Porsche 911 GT3 RS in the hands of Kevin Buckler. Former overall winners at the Rolex 24 at Daytona, now making his way through the garage area to get that car fixed. Moments ago, while running 6th in the class, threatening to break into the top 20 overall, Buckler had a problem. Let's take a look. Down into turn 1, across the grass, right rear tire down. Did not hit anything. Now in real time, let's listen. Wow. Well, if you're going to have a tire go down, I guess that's about the safest trajectory you could take. Down into turn 1 and across that broad expanse of grass. And the crew goes to work. Now, Buckler did a very smart thing. Instead of trying to limp that car all the way around the racetrack, he drove it to the back of the paddock, then turned across the track and into the garage area, cutting off virtually the entire lap. Let's go to Brian Till.
Well, the car is in significant damage when that tire went. It just turns basically into a big saw. It did a lot of damage to the bodywork. You can see Kevin Buckler is looking at the right rear of the car, and it also damaged the left side also in that spin. Timo Bernhard has gotten in the car. Buckler is out. Bob?
And Bernard, like Kevin, the reigning champion here at the Rolex 24 at Daytona. 63, it's the day done for those guys. We'll have to wait and see. They've had such a successful start. Hugh Plum was leading SGS for the majority of the time. That now goes to Randy Pobst in the TPC car. But these guys were up as high as inside the top 10 after those first round of pit stops. And we'll try and update you on that 63 situation. You're looking at the Racers Group Porsche here. The guys go to work. They've got a new rear right tire on. Timo Bernard on board, and they send the car.
Well, with any luck, the suspension wasn't damaged. As Bob said, that was a pretty safe trajectory across all that grass, but a lot of sand in there, and that car is going to have a lot of sand in there wearing away and a lot of revolving and reciprocating parts now. So hopefully it's not in a place where it's going to do any damage to any bearings or suspension pieces or obviously the brakes.
This is where you need a really good team manager, because the team manager needs to get the drivers together, get them calmed down. Say, look, guys, that's not a big deal. The car's all right. You know, we're a long way to go in this race. We can make up the time. Let's just get back on our game plan. Don't panic. That's the main deal right here.
When you get used to these high and wide camera shots, the external shots, and then you go on board when something like that happens and you start spinning, it brings it home just how fast they're going.
Plus that terrible sound that you heard when the tire blew, and you heard it going in shrapnel. And Kevin, quite honestly, a lucky man that it went where it did, because that could have been really bad.
Running order hasn't changed. It's still Terry Borchella leading the way from Angelelli, Donahue, Leitzinger, Hurley, Hayward in the top 5. From Taze, Andy Wallace in the number 2, Howard Boss Motorsports, the Citco-sponsored Crawford from Goad, and then Shane Lewis in the Southern Motorsports car. Let's hear from Kevin Buckler. He's with Brian.
Kevin, you saw it obviously on a first-hand basis, and we'll see a replay of it here shortly, I'm sure, but hairy moment. Go ahead and look at the monitor. I think we're going to put it up there. Talk us through it.
Driving down the front stretch, I had a good lap going, no problem. The right rear let go, and I cinched my neck up. I was sure I was going to smash this up as hard as I've ever hit. I mean, it was 180 miles an hour right there. Even the windshield wiper went backwards. That's definitely a don't try this at home type of thing, you know, so I'm on the radio telling the guys, I think I got a flat. There you go.
Any sense at all, any warning that it was going down?
Just popped. It just popped.
You did get the car back over here. You had a chance to look at it before they got Timo in and out. Any ideas on whether it's damaged?
One of the good things about having been here so many times, I knew all the back routes. So anyway, got it back in here quick, and they're in right now. I just hope all it is the tire, because it was really bizarre.
You guys don't need any more adversity.
No, we don't. Maybe, you know, maybe it's all out of the way now. So.
We can only hope. He still smells like smoke, guys.
What he said right there makes a lot of sense. He's been here a long time. There's a pass for the lead right there.
Yeah, new race leader yet again, and Borchella's fighting. He comes back on the inside in the newly Kodak-sponsored Pontiac-powered Doran. Max Angelelli, welcome back to the Rolex Series. He's breathing new life into this series with a new team. He's been exciting so far at the start of this one. He and Borchella going hard at it.
Boy, they are going hard at it. And as Dorsey keeps saying, you know, this is a 24-hour race, guys. But of course, you know, when the old blood's up when you're in a race, it's very hard to tell people to drive cautiously. But these two guys are really humming along. And of course, the problem is dicing like this when they come into slower traffic. And here goes Angeli for the lead again. No, side by side, very even power, two different chassis. You can see the very sharp rake on the front of the Riley, the 10 car.
Watch the braking zone there. That's where Angelelli.
That's where Angelelli, right, yeah. When they come around past the stripe, go into that turn 1, he just picks up handfuls of time on the brakes.
We've mentioned the driver lineup in this car as Angelelli now regains the lead. But what about the lineup in Terry Borchella's car? He's the reigning DP champion. He's got former Champ Car star and now NASCAR Nextel Cup driver Christian Fittipaldi, as well as Andy Pilgrim, a former class winner here at the Rolex 24, and leader, well, Donahue spins.
Oh, and pulls out from the other Red Bull car.
And gets going again. He was in 5th position when that happened, so he's lost a lot of ground, and now Didier Taze is right on board. Uh-oh, replay of last year. Remember these two guys last year? It was a boxing match between these two. Well, let's see what happens this time, and Andy Wallace tucked in behind in the number 2, Sitco Crawford. There are some really nice-looking cars in this field.
I mean, I'm so impressed over last year of these new cars, the speed that they have, the way they've developed the bodies. They are real nice race cars.
That's the Doug Goad car right behind him. No, that's number 2 car.
That's Andy Wallace.
Andy Wallace.
Tucking in behind Didier Taze in the 27 Lexus-powered Doran. A car that came into the series late last year, won a pole at the hands of Bill Aublin, didn't come up with a win, came very, very close, and really showed everyone what Kevin Doran can do. And here we go. Didier Taze was actually driving for Bell Motorsports. He's in the 54. Watch this. Bang, bang. These guys going hard at it. That was up at Watkins Glen. Now, this was at Champions Weekend last November. Take a look at these guys beating each other up. This was in the closing laps of the final race of the year. Donahue on the right, Tays on the left, and they were relentless on each other.
The door of Donahue's car opening.
It was too good not to let it go, and we asked the guys a little more about this.
You know, Diddy had gotten into us a couple of times, and in the last race, he got into me again, and, you know, the rest is history.
Contact, side by side, these guys are not giving an inch. Whoa, David Donahue, and the door flies open again. Donahue in his last race of the season, and look at this, these guys are beating each other up.
I'm not going to go back again to what happened with David, because, you know, maybe we didn't see the complete part on the TV, but anyway.
And Donahue, great driving, he slams it back up the inside. These two come together again. This fight is far from done. And look at this, they will drive each other into the ground.
It wasn't just a one-off incident, I'll say that right now, but it gets to a point where you just can't keep getting pushed around.
Didier Tays and David Donahue, how many more times can they belt each other?
Man, without blowing a tire, tearing the bodywork off, unbelievable.
For sure, you know, thing like that will happen, you know, I'm sure again, and I hope not too often, because I don't like that kind of style of driving.
Donahue is not done with yet. His fight is not over.
No, this is not over.
No, paybacks are going to come around next year. Next year will be exciting. I'll tell you that right now. I took the bad guy kind of scenario coming away from that whole deal, and, you know, so be it. I don't want to be pushed around all year long. I'm not going to stand for it anymore. My team puts too much effort into it.
No need to guess what they're thinking.
I don't think we'll see much of that at this race anyway, because it's too far to go, but you got to wonder in the future.
Andy Wallace has now separated David Donahue and Didier Tays. You ride with Andy. Let's have a listen. Rounding the Porsche-powered Fab car up nicely, so Andy Wallace jumps up into the top 5, continues his forward surge. It's still Max Angelelli up front for SunTrust Racing, but this man, Andy Wallace, the 3-time Rolex 24 winner, he's on a surge.
Welcome back to the 42nd running of the Rolex 24 here at Daytona. Now, when Scott Pruitt made his last pit stop about 10 minutes ago, he was not quite happy with the balance on that Ganassi race car. So they made a couple of changes. One thing they changed was this rear wicker bill, or otherwise known as a gurney. It actually has an effect on the rear downforce on the car. They went to a slightly smaller one. We understand that Scott had a bit of push in the car, so going to a smaller rear gurney will loosen up the rear end a little bit. They also made a tire compound change, and there's 2 tire compounds available from Goodyear. One is the softer 370, and this is the harder 480, and they went to the 480 compound, so they're switching to a slightly harder compound. They believe it's more consistent and has a better balance. When you look at this team, they've won 4 consecutive kart championships. They're the current IRL champion. There's a reason for that. They're prepared. They did 15 hours of testing at Phoenix. They tried to break the car. They couldn't, but they were really ready in case anything happens. Look at all the bodywork that's ready around here in pit lane. They've also got a quick change rear end. They can change the gearbox in under 20 minutes, they believe. And they also have a revolutionary new quick pad setup, which we'll show you a little bit later in the show, for performance friction. So there's a reason these boys win championships, and it's all about preparation. Brian Till?
Well, Calvin, down at SunTrust, they're setting up for a pit stop. Angelelli will be bringing the car in shortly, and Wayne Taylor will be getting in. You know, after 24 starts here, I was talking to Wayne about the pace earlier on that Terry Borcheller was running. Asked him if he was surprised by the aggressive nature of Borcheller's driving. He said, yeah, he was a little bit. And about that time, Angelelli made the pass into 1. I just asked him about it again. He just kind of smiled and said, well, I guess the car must be running pretty good. But yeah, they're surprised. It is a battle, and it's a battle early. Look for it to continue for another 22 plus hours. Lee?
This is such a good lineup, and we will, over the 15 and a half hours of our live coverage, we will go through all these wonderful lineups. For the SunTrust team, you've got Angelelli, who brings his experience from Europe and here in various sports car categories. Wayne Taylor, this marks his 24th 24-hour race.
And I remember when I went to South Africa to race in the Carl Army 9-hour 20-odd years ago, Wayne Taylor was just a kid there with his dad, and it was really picking my brains about coming to race in America or Europe, which was the best place to go to. And here he is, an American citizen, and obviously made his decision, and he's here and been very, very successful as well. But this is a great lineup of drivers. Only 3 of them as opposed to 4 or 5, but every one of them are very much of a proven commodity. Tremendously quick team.
Very astute choice in their third driver, Emmanuel Collard, who's the reigning Le Mans 24-hour GT champion. He combined with Sasha Masson and Lucas Luhr last year. Great lineup there, and he's been doing well in the short amount of time he's had in this car. Very nearly got into Formula One, Emile Collard. He was so close, but things just didn't line up quite right for him, so he never made it. Max Angelelli working his way through some of the GT and SGS cars. Incidentally, Mike Fitzgerald in the Orbit Porsche for 44. He leads the GT class. The 16 car is back out on track, thankfully, and Dave Murray is on board this car. One of 2 cars for Asco Motorsport. And let's have a look at their problems so far today. Top of your screen, Craig Stanton, high-speed crash. Fortunately, plenty of tyre barrier there. Crunch. Ooh, that horrible noise. And here is this team car contacting the barrier with Joe Kuntz on board there. A heavy, heavy contact. Let's hear from Craig now.
Greg, that's not not how you really wanted to start the Rolex. Take us through that wreck there.
Which one?
Yours.
Well, wow, you saw about everything right there. You know what? Just tight quarters. As a restart, there's about 4 people going for 1 spot. And, you know, everybody's running hard and everybody's trying to get to the front. It's real prestigious. Yeah, you know, it's just one of those things. Man, I wish we'd see that on national TV.
We have fewer classes this year, more cars. Is traffic a bigger issue?
Yeah, it is. You know, we have a goal here, and it's to protect the car, and it was unfortunate. The Osco guys worked so hard. These guys have, you know, basically took all these guys from the different teams and put them into the A team. And they have come together to work so well this week. Brand new team, and we're going to go do some big things this year. We're really excited.
David Murray's now in the car. Any word on it?
No, he said it's perfect. I don't think we hit anything structural. You can see him right there. He's rolling along pretty good. It's just body damage. It's too bad we're down a bunch of laps. So we're going to keep digging. It's real early, and I'm not nervous at all.
Back to you, Lee.
Well, Dave Murray, for me, is a real unsung hero. He did a wonderful job here last year when driving for Renworks, finishing 3rd overall and 3rd in class. Here's Mike Fitzgerald for Orbit Racing as Andy Wallace ducks up the inside. Mike leads the GT class and is 15th overall. And talk about a good lineup. They have the Policastros on board with them, the father and son team, but they've picked up Robert Liddell and Johnny Molan as well. So that, too, is a very, very strong lineup for the GT class. The 94 is in pit lane. Problems there. Another right rear.
That's 3 right rears, and that does not bode well. It usually means here at Daytona.
This does not bode well for Dunlop, because Dunlop is the spec tire on the GT class, and that's 3 right rears have gone. Maybe they need to be back in the truck there, rethinking the compound.
And of course, this is the nature of Daytona and the banking. The artificial load put by the banking on the right rear is giving it a lot of heat. This is a bad situation.
And we saw that from that onboard camera when we look at the suspension. We were looking at those 2 springs mounted. The one on the left of our picture or the right of the car was so much shorter than the one on the left, so that just shows you how much load is put into the right rear of these cars, and it is tough in that right rear tire.
And of course, that shock absorber was going like crazy over there on the one side while the other one laid there helpless.
Exactly, you know, the trading away.
Francois Labhart for the Master Car entry on board. Jim McCallion is in fact in that team, the man behind the Long Beach Grand Prix. As we leave you momentarily for a quick commercial break, let's update you on the classes. Angelelli, Borcella, Leitzinger, Hayward, Wallace and Donahue, the top 6 in DP. The GT standings, we know that Fitzgerald and Orbit are leading the way, but the Flying Lizard team, here they come with Lonnie Pechnik, one of the team owners on board, and Fabrizio Di Simone, a very, very fast guy from the FIA GT Championship. He sits 3rd. And the SGS class, the new class, Randy Post, who raced in GS1 last year in the Grand Am Cup, which is, of course, now SGS. He leads the way from the reigning champion, Jean-Francois Dumoulin. Welcome back to the Rolex 24 at Daytona. And plenty happening down in pit lane. Former race leader Terry Borcella has just pitted. And now we see action down here in the Howard Boss team. Brian?
Well, that's right. Butch Leitzinger has gotten out. Elliott Forbes Robinson has gotten in, and they will make the same push rod adjustment to the number 4 car that they made to the 2 car earlier. Lee?
Plenty happening down there. Here is the 10. Angelelli is in, and Wayne Taylor slotting himself in.
Looks like a routine pit stop here. We're going to have a driver change. We're going to get all the tires, obviously. And this is the way it should run. No panic. Everybody just doing their job.
And we're hearing word from the ground that there's a few sprinkles coming already. And this is exactly what the drivers and teams did not want to hear. We said right at the top of the show, there was about an 80% chance that it would rain today. And apparently there's some sprinkles on the ground. The 74 Flying Lizard Porsche has had a great start. And Chris is there.
This is actually the 3rd driver change for this team. Lonnie Petchnik is getting out. Seth Nyman jumping in the car, so they're trying to get through a driver rotation real quick here. Hopefully trying to take advantage of some of these early cautions. However, with this rain, this might kind of set these guys off. They might have to come back in if the skies do open up and get a little bit more rain down here because they are putting slicks on the car. This team came here and qualified 2 cars. They actually qualified 1 and 2 in GT and then decided to go with the 74 car rather than the 75 car. Both cars were about the same speed. However, they just said this car was prepared a little bit better for the 24.
Nice to have that choice, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, that gives you a pretty interesting look at how much stuff goes on between the drivers on a driver exchange. Of course, it's not just the seatbelts anymore. You've got your radio hookup. You've got that little tube you saw as a drink bottle, as well as a lot of these guys wear the Hans device. You see that's the brake smoke there. They're changing out a screen right now to change the rubber from the tire from going forward and blocking the radiator.
All right, we had a driver change. You heard Brian mention that the legend Elliott Forbes Robinson is in the 4. Let's hear from the man who's just stepped from this car.
That's right, the legend DFR is in, and the legend, or soon-to-be legend, Butch Leitzinger is out, yeah. Now, you guys came in, you did the driver change, but you also made a suspension adjustment to the rear of the car as well as an aerodynamic change. How is the car out there?
It's okay. We went a little bit too late on the downforce, so it's under braking it moves around quite a bit, and in the faster kicks it steps out a bit, and it's just not really comfortable to drive right now. So we went up a little bit on the rear wicker to give it some more downforce. And the other thing was that the front crossweights were out a little bit, and it was locking the inside front going into the first turn if he got on it pretty hard. So they put a little more weight on that. So as you saw, it took an extra minute or 2, which it's annoying at this stage of the race because you can see where your competition is. You don't want to race them. But it's going to make the car so much better for the rest of the race. And especially for Dave, who hasn't been in the car a whole lot, it's good to give him a comfortable car.
A little annoying, but a long, long way to go for these guys. 190, a little uncomfortable, I don't know.
So we see Elliott Forbes Robinson out on the track, 2-time winner of this event, and it's great to have him back. Back to that weather situation, things are not looking all that pretty here at Daytona Beach as far as weather goes. And apparently there are a few sprinkles. Naturally, before the race, a lot of concern about the rain coming here in this 24-hour event. We decided to eavesdrop on a few of the drivers' conversations.
I told Tony, normally you go 2 whole revolutions to the rear on the brakes when it rains, but I would do it 1 at a time.
One thing you got to do on this deal too, you got to turn it past because it'll spring back.
Yeah.
So you got to go past and then come to it.
Okay. And obviously it doesn't work if your foot's on the brake. So you get to do it with your foot off the brake.
It seems it's going to rain after it doesn't, and I think it's okay. Who's going to hold on?
Oh yeah, I do. We'll hold on for a while.
He's going to hold on for you for sure.
Yeah, we'll be okay.
When I come in,
This weather reminds me of 2001. I know. It's unbelievable. I know. I hope we don't get 14 hours of rain, man. Oh, thanks, Jared. Thank you.
Oh, look at this. Kevin Buckler with another flat right rear. Now, while we were away, there was another. This is the 5th now flat right rear Dunlop.
In the GT class.
In the GT class. So they have a big problem there. Let me explain to the people at home what Dale Jr. and Tony were talking about with Andy Wallace. They were talking about turning the brake bias when it rains toward the rear. The reason for that is when you brake in the dry, you brake quite hard, and all of the weight goes to the front end of the vehicle. So the front brakes do most of the work. However, you know, in the rain, you can't brake that hard, so it has too much front, you have to go rear. As we look right here at that beautiful Maserati, who's got a cone stuck right there in the radiator in it.
One of two of these fabulous new cars, these Maserati Trofeo Lights. This is the Ferrari of Washington entry, the 33. Glenn Marquis in charge of this team, the man who helped Kurt Wagner and Brent Martini win the GT championship last year. They've switched from the Ferrari to the Maserati. Of course, that dealership sells both Ferrari and Maseratis. That's why they've decided to race this one this year. And this car, talking with their rivals, the Risi Competizione team principal, Giuseppe Risi, he said they really feel this car will be great for next year's rules and regulations in the Rolex series, but they decided to bring it out and kind of get a year's development on it.
Yeah, and look who's leading here. Hurley Haywood leading this thing, and of course he is the most experienced driver and the most winningest driver at the 24-hour Rolex.
And Hurley Haywood comes up on the SunTrust Riley, and just up ahead, Elliott, Forbes, Robinson. There was a late substitution of the fourth driver in this car. Sadly, Scott Goodyear was unable to start this race. That wasn't a last-minute thing, but it certainly was several days ago. Whilst playing ice hockey, he sustained a couple of broken ribs, and a last-minute replacement, they called in the reigning GTS Rolex Series champion, Tommy Riggins. Jacksonville-based team, Jacksonville-based driver. They were pleased that Tommy was on hand to step in. Ride with the Howard Boss Motorsports, Crawford with a Chevrolet power plant, Andy Wallace the driver, 3 times a winner, Hurley Haywood 5 times a winner. There's 8 victories right there.
Like I said before, but at the beginning of this race, Hurley Haywood had 14,635 laps, but our pole sitter, Scott Pruitt, second, 8,376 laps. Third in that category is EFR itself, 8,670. Goes to the roof. But do the math, you know how it is.
43 laps already down, and so far so good. I mean, there was a few incidents early on. We've just had the 2 full course caution periods, and it's Hurley Haywood who leads the way from Andy Wallace and David Donahue. So 2 Brumos cars up in the top 3. Then Scott Maxwell, the reigning DP winner from last year's Rolex 24-hour. There they are, the overall standing, as we take a quick break. Speed Channel's coverage of the Rolex 24 at Daytona is brought to you by Rolex, the watch of achievers the world over. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. Hurley Haywood in the 59. The Porsche-powered Fab car is your race leader. 2 wins last year for Hurley. It came very early on in the season. Then they struggled late in the season to finish kind of on a high note. They're looking to start this season in the best possible way. They lead this race at the moment. And Hurley was very instrumental in this new drive for a new category, the Daytona prototype class. Last year, we only had 6 cars here, nearly 3 times that amount 12 months down the track right here today, with 17 Daytona prototypes starting this race. We caught up with several of the drivers and got their views on this new category.
When we started last year, you know, we came up with this concept and everybody kind of looked at us and said, you guys are crazy.
I really wasn't sure at first. I thought, well, maybe they're not powerful enough or they're not fast enough. You get yourself sat in one and they whistle around this track. So really, really good. I think that the combination between the size of the tires, you know, the amount of horsepower, the amount of downforce is a good combination. I really enjoy driving the car. Nobody's really done this before. It was a big gamble on their part, but I feel it's paying off. I mean, look how many cars are out there now. It's amazing.
I think the growth of the series, to my knowledge, is unprecedented because it started from scratch. Remember, you know, a year ago today, it was still pretty much an idea that people were just beginning to believe that it was a reality.
It is very competitive, it's very economical, and it is basically the NASCAR of sports cars, the way I see it, and it's going to work.
It's the way sports car racing ought to be able to go flat out from the green flag to the checker flag and fight for every inch on the racetrack for 3 to 24 hours, whatever it takes. And that's really exciting from a driver and a team's perspective. There's no pacing yourself in this anymore.
And they're not exactly pacing themselves at the moment either. They're going at it hard at it. Top 13 positions all filled with Daytona prototypes. The number 2 is in pit lane, and the 21 PTG BMW has lost one of its wheels.
If he slows down, he'll catch up with him and put it back on. But I don't think he knows that.
Second time we've seen off. Whoa, look at this.
Ooh, that's not good. Slow down, let that wheel catch up.
It has been a tough day for PTG BMW with Phil Oberlin.
Well, he's more fortunate. At least he's not too far from pit lane. He'll get back.
The whole idea to run 2 cars was to have one in reserve, and smart move on behalf of team principal Tom Milner, because they may be calling on that second car, because the 21 has hardly had a successful day so far.
There sits the wheel and tire combination.
Here is the real-time replay. Talk us through, Dorsey.
Well, look here. Yeah, it's come off already. He blew through the chicane. That's very, very smart right there. That was chicane. If he'd have turned through there, he's trying to get back to the pits the quickest way he can. There goes the tire and the wheel. And now he's going to get back. He is in the pits right now as we speak. That was probably a smart. Now he's going to be penalized for blowing off the chicane, maybe a lap. But it's better than being broke down out on the racetrack, which would be several laps.
Bill Oberlin, Rolex Series GT champion 2 years ago, reigning touring car champion of the Speed World Challenge. And here is the 27, Doran Lister. Mark Goossens now behind the wheel after Didier Tays did a fabulous opening stint. Chris?
Didier, you guys had to start 31st because of that technical infraction in qualifying. Tell us a little bit about coming through traffic. I know you had some concerns earlier in the day.
It's always difficult to start in the middle of the pack. You know, you have more risk, you know, to have people spinning on the front of you. But we had a very good start. You know, we had an early yellow, but that didn't really do anything to our strategy. And I went through traffic nicely, and I think now we're 5th or 6th, and I think we're in good shape now.
Last year we only saw a little bit of rain at Watkins Glen. You got to experience that. Is there anything you told Mark?
No, Mark ran a lot in Europe. You know, he's from Belgium also, and I think he ran more often than I do in the rain. He should be okay, and it looks like it will come pretty soon.
Back to you, Lee.
Thanks, Chris. Nice to hear from Didier, the Rolex Series champion of 2 years ago. And the 59 and 58 have pitted. This is David Donahue bringing in the Red Bull Porsche-powered Fab car. Darren Law is now exiting pit lane, and JC France is on board the 59, so their first driver changes. We ride with the 2. The Howard Boss Motorsports Sitco-sponsored Crawford. Brian, do you have more on this car?
Well, they came in for just fuel and tires, Lee, but they had a problem with the air gun on the right rear. It would not come off the lug nut. It got stuck on there, cost them precious time. My question is, they left Andy Wallace in the car. It is going to rain later, and you're going to either have to choose between Earnhardt Jr. and Tony Stewart to go in that car. I question why they left Wayne Taylor, or why they left Andy Wallace in. They could put those guys in when it's dry and put Taylor back in when it's wet, but you never question Max Crawford, do you?
No, very smart guy, and Andy Wallace has been an integral part of the development of this car for the 2 Howard Boss cars and the Spirit of Daytona car. They did something like 9 tests covering 3,200 miles in the lead up to this event, and there was a lot of interest and a lot of speculation, a lot of excitement about this Crawford before it even hit the racetrack. They said, if you're going to purchase a car, this could be the car to have.
It certainly showed to be a very nice, good, fast car right out of the box, hasn't it?
It's been perfect. Max Crawford said to me actually yesterday at a press conference, just talking on the side, he said, how long do you think you can go on a, if it's green, how long can you go on a regular stop? He said, he looked at me, he had a bit of a wry smile, and he said, you'd be surprised at how far we can go. That's one of the things we've been working on a long, long time. JC France is in behind the wheel of the 59. Let's go down to the Brumos pit right now.
There's not a guy at this racetrack who knows how to win this race better than Hurley Haywood. Surprised by the pace that these guys are laying down early on?
It's a little quick. I was thinking about dropping back a little bit and just sort of watching, but we sort of fell into the pace there, and then I don't know what happened. Somebody crashed or spin or something, and we were right up front. I was driving the car easy. I mean, if we can drive it like that all night long, and I think no problem.
The pace may be quick, but it seems to be comfortable.
Yeah, it's very comfortable. You just got to be really careful with the slow cars, you know, not they got their own little race going on, and you know, a couple times I got really squeezed on the banking going down in the bus stop. I mean, they're going to put a piece of paper between us, but other than that, it's going good.
It's the battle with the clock guys, but it's also the battle with that other class, and you can't forget it. Chris?
Well, I'm down here with Tom Milner. Tom, more problems for the 21. What's going on?
Well, apparently, after having fixed the initial problem, which was had something to do with the engine electronics, we discovered that now that we had a bad wheel gun, but we had already changed it. That was the problem with the wheel coming off. I guess those are the after effects. If you haven't raced endurance races for 2 years, somewhere along the line you get caught.
Is the 21 going to get it back out on track?
Yes, we'll fix it. We'll be back out.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's not reflective of PTG BMW. They are a slick outfit. They work incredibly hard to get the 6-cylinder engine into those, what were the 2001 GTR V8 powered cars. They'll be back, and they'll be back strong. We'll be back too. As always, on Sunday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern, you can catch the latest in news from the world of motorsport. Speed News, Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on Speed. We ride on board the 15 Essex Racing Ford-powered Multimatic, and it's time for one of our favorites, and I hope it's one of your favorites, the sounds of speed. Turn it up and enjoy. Fabulous sounding power plants out there, and we see here the battle for the lead. Andy Pilgrim now on board the Bell Motorsports car. Scott Pruitt still behind the wheel of the CompUSA Lexus powered Riley, and traffic playing its hand, and Pilgrim has been able to reduce that margin. good tussle up top. Here is the BMW-powered Fab car. Look at Pilgrim going for the lead, looks for the inside run. They come past the Doncaster SGS Porsche. Andy the low line, Pruitt the high line.
Guys duking it out pretty good here. We're right on board. There's another car that's top of us. Of course, they're all aware of that. See what happens down in the brake zone.
Pilgrim now up in front as he comes past the Southern Motorsports BMW Fab car with George Robinson on board. Great to see George back in the series as well. And he's teamed with old partner Jack Baldwin. You're on board with Scott Pruitt, though. He's taking this fight back to Andy Pilgrim.
Listen to the different engine sounds when you hear that. It's on. Right on board with Scott there. That's, of course, for Lexus power. Part of the difference, the Lexus can rev to 8,000 RPM. If you're driving a Chevrolet engine, only 6,500 revs. A Ford can run to 69. A BMW to 7,000. If you're a Porsche, run it till she blows. No limit whatsoever.
You're looking at Andy Pilgrim for Bell Motorsports, who played a hand in the championship last year, assisting Forrest Barber and Terry Borchella. He came on board for the team and did a wonderful job when things got tight as far as the championship was concerned, and lended a hand.
There's that slippery corner. You hear Scott working the throttle. Very gentle with the acceleration, not the speed of the tire. Here's the King, fastest car on the infield. Absolutely frightening at night. A little lift there. He's not quite flat. You heard him lift. No need to do it flat if you don't need to, that's for sure. Makes you old quick.
As you enjoy this ride with Scott Pruitt, fabulous diversity at the top of the leaderboard. You've got a Pontiac-powered Doran leading, from a Lexus-powered Riley, from a Porsche-powered Fab car, a Lexus-powered Doran, then a Chevrolet-powered Crawford, followed by a Porsche Fab car and a Pontiac-powered Riley. The mix is working.
Absolutely working.
Let's get it down to the pits, and Brian Till.
One of the rising stars of Grand Am just got out of the car in this Rolex series. You stepped out of that 45 Daytona prototype, Gunnar Jeanette. How are the conditions on the track right now?
It started out, it was a little loose, and then it just got a little worse, and we came in on the caution, didn't change tires, so at the end it was pretty slippery.
And you got some pretty big names following you later. You got Petty, and then you got some guy named Paul Newman. How's the track going to be for those guys?
Well, you never know. The skies are changing pretty rapidly here, and there's a little bit of rain falling now. So Mike Brockman just got in the car. You never know what it's going to be doing in an hour or two. So, you know, for some teams, they're hoping for rain. If the car's good, I normally like the rain. So we'll see what happens, but you just never can tell.
I can tell you, Petty and Newman may not do a lot of racing, but they are good. I watched Paul Newman last year at Lime Rock in the rain. The man, he can still pedal one of these cars, Lee.
Yeah, and he just says it gives him such a lift, gives him such a thrill to be behind the wheel. So long as he can still get into the car and get out of the car and do a fair job, he'll continue to do it. It's a real thrill for him. Time for us to take a quick break, but we will return to Daytona International Speedway. It's Andy Pilgrim for Bell Motorsports who leads the way overall and in Daytona prototype. For GT, some fabulous scraps going on there. Ian James in the third Racers Group Porsche. He leads the way at the top there from Philip Peter and Robin Liddell for Orbit Racing. And in SGS, until a few moments ago, the SGS car was the highest out of its class or GT, and that's with Jean-Francois Dumoulin on board. Two hours down, just 22 to go. And it's been an eventful start with Joe Kunz in the Arsko Motorsports Porsche nailing the wall, and we feel he may have received some help to get into that position. It was a tough start to the day for those guys. Kevin Buckler with a scary moment at 180 miles an hour. The right rear blew, and that's been one of 5 that has gone. Have a listen to this. Kevin, being one of the great characters in this sport, got out, had a laugh and said, well, it's going to happen anywhere. That was a good spot too. The team worked very, very hard to get it done. David Donoghue in the Red Bull Porsche Fab car spun down in turn 1 whilst in a top 3 position, but was able to regroup and get it going. And Bill Auberlen lost his left front, cut the bus stop, decided to go straight ahead, and was able to limp back to pit lane and indeed the paddock and garage area and get that attended to. And then just recently we saw a great scrap for the lead with the Kodak Bell Motorsports Daytona prototype. Andy Pilgrim behind the wheel, taking the fight to Scott Pruitt. Now you're back with us live, and it's still Andy Pilgrim up in front. Scott Pruitt is behind him, and then Didier Tays for Doran Lister Racing.
Look how dirty the windscreen is on that car. And if it was sunny out, that would be a big problem for Scott. Being that it's overcast, it's not so bad. But watch as you see pieces of rain hitting right here. It is starting to sprinkle now.
Comes past the Ford-powered Multimatic. This is second place in GT, Philip Peter. Very experienced European racer on board the Ferrari 360 GT, the Red Bull B car. And they've done a nice job so far. It's Orbit Racing out in front with the Scotsman Robin Liddell, who leads GT. This car is second. And third is the Ken Dobson number 97 car, doing a nice job for Graham Nash Motorsport. That's the top three in GT. They can tell you as far as just in the simple order of things, an SGS car is up there and running the top of their field, and Scott Pruitt has finally come in. Brian Till has more.
You're exactly right, Lee. They're in. They'll do fuel, tires, and then also a driver change. Pruitt is out. Scott Dixon is in. Don't forget, it has been a long time since Scott Dixon did any road racing. He's about to do it under very difficult conditions, a car that he has not been in, but for a few laps, and certainly not in wet conditions. It will be trial by fire.
And I would take a gamble. I haven't spoken to Scott this weekend. I would take a gamble and say this is the first time he has raced a car with a roof over his head. Certainly in New Zealand and Australia he did. And since he's been here, it's been Indy Lights, Champ Cars, and straight to IRL. So this is a new experience for Scott Dixon, the reigning IRL IndyCar champion.
As he sits in there right now, it's not wet enough to go to those rain tires. We saw him up on the wall, but it's not wet enough to do that. So he's got to go out on slick. So that's the worst scenario if it's when they start running hard here.
Here's Robin Liddell, the Scotsman, teamed up with the Policastros, Jay and Joe, the father and son combination. His other teammates are Mike Fitzgerald and the very fast Johnny Molan. A great combination, and these guys are certainly looking for victory. Joe Policastro, the father, has anticipated he won't do many miles, many laps throughout this 24-hour period. He'll leave it to the 4. And there's Scott Pruitt. He's just clocked on 2 hours straight up. Not a bad effort.
Not a bad, and he looks pretty open for the whole thing. He's not too sweated up. Of course, it's an overcast and a rather cool day. These cars, by the way, can be really, really hot on the inside.
Seeing that, talking with the team and with Max Pappas. Getting back to what I was saying about SGS, if you just do the straight-out order, an SGS is second in comparison to the GT car. So the GT car is the highest in the running at 14th. In 15th is this car. It's the Doncaster racing car with Dave Lacey behind the wheel. The team owner's son, John Lacey, runs a very nice operation up there. They've just picked up some new sponsorship with Mindstar.
I should say also the SGS car, it can win. It really can. It's got one advantage. It carries more fuel. In fact, carries 25 gallons compared to a GT car 17 gallons or a Daytona prototype is 24 gallons. So it carries the most fuel.
And here is Andrew Davis for Fox Hill Racing. Beautifully designed car. This design, in fact, was done by Mike Borkowski's brother. He's a graphic artist and has done a lovely job with this car. And for Mike Corley, who's relatively new to pro racing, who is the Fox Hill team owner, he's done a wonderful break. And as soon as Scott Pruitt is finished debriefing there in the Ganassi pit, our Brian Till will talk to him. The reigning Trans Am Series champion. We'll hear from him up next.
The formula for victory in a 24-hour race is complex. Immutable laws of physics multiplied by unpredictable human factors.
Perseverance.
Preparation.
Teamwork.
Patience.
Drive.
Focus.
Concentration.
Survival. Survival.
Tenacity.
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 Avoid mistakes, add lots of luck, and your chances of winning improve infinitely.
It's a race against the clock.
It's a race against myself.
It's a race of survival.
It's a test of character as well as skill. This is an endurance test like no other.
Last year, Kevin Buckler and his Racers Group Porsche beat the new Daytona prototype field to win overall. This year, the fleet of prototypes has tripled, and more than 50 teams in all will take their shot at a place in history.
It's a long way home.
Each year, the North American racing season kicks off with Speed Weeks at Daytona. And for more than 4 decades, Speed Weeks has kicked off with a sports car racing classic. Welcome to the 42nd running of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. We would love to welcome you to bright North Florida skies, but that is not our weather situation. We have cloudy skies, cool temperatures, and a strong threat of rain as we welcome you live, kicking off 15 and a half hours of Speed Channel coverage of an American sports car classic. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. Welcome to our Speed Channel host position just above Victory Lane here at the World Center of Racing. Sports cars have been racing here for as long as their stock car cousins. But while NASCAR has reached the peak of American motorsports popularity, sports car racing has had more of a roller coaster sort of career. The Grand American Road Racing Association a couple of years ago tried to change all that by simplifying the class structure from 5 classes to 3 and introducing a cost-effective new marquee class called Daytona Prototype. Last year, just a handful of DPs were on the grid. It was more of a whimper than a bang as this new chapter in sports car racing opened. But this year, it's a whole different story. We have no fewer than 17 Daytona Ferrari is back at Daytona with no fewer than 4 360 Modenas in the GT class to challenge BMW and Porsche. And we have another Italian brand here. The Trident is into North American racing, making their debut this weekend with a lightweight racing version of their Trofeo Coupe. And there are 2 of them here, along with American Iron in the form of a bellowing Chevy Corvette. Dunlop is supplying the tires. Let's get down to Chris Neville.
Well, Bob, you think things would go easier for the Racers Group. 2002, they got the GT win. Last year, they got the overall. However, they did sustain that transporter fire this year en route to the track. And the team sustained over $250,000 in damage to the equipment. However, they really rallied behind the situation. They descended on Gila Bend, Arizona. They got the cars to the racetrack. The cars were not damaged. A lot of their support equipment was. They did get here, and they ended up qualifying second in the 66 car. However, due to a paperwork infraction, that time was disallowed. They have to start in the second half of the group. They will not be starting in the top 30 today. You'd think the race gods might be against Kevin Buckler this weekend. However, in the 66 car, he's got an ace in his hand. That card is, this will be the first year he's got the support of a full Porsche factory lineup of drivers. Brian Till?
Well, you know, the Cup guys don't get to do a lot of road racing, Chris, but one of the guys who enjoys it is Tony Stewart. Now, Tony, the power plant may be from the same manufacturer, but it's in the wrong place. How is adapting to this Daytona prototype?
It's not been real bad for me. I mean, I ran 3 years in the IRL full-time and was used to rear-engine cars or mid-engine cars, and you know, this car is really fun. I mean, Max Crawford and his whole crew back in North Carolina, they did a great job building these cars. They're very, very stable, and you know, I think it showed as quick as Dale Jr. and I were able to get up to speed, and I think our quickest laps for the weekend are between the 3 drivers are all within 3/10 of each other. So, you know, I think that we're all very, very comfortable here.
One thing they're going to have to get used to, standing here in pit lane when the green flag falls, Bob.
That's right, and there's a look at Andy Wallace, who is sharing that car with Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Tony Stewart. Now, the third class in competition today is known as Super Grand Sport. Call it an entry-level class, if you will, but they have the possibility of doing very, very well. It's a class dominated by Porsches, and there are some very experienced Porsche teams. There's Craig Stanton, a former winner in the Grand American Cup Championship. Randy Pobst has won his share of North American Road Racing Championships in a variety of classes. And keep in mind, a Porsche 911, although a GT class car, won overall a year ago. Hoosier is the spec tire in SGS, Dunlop in GT, and Goodyear in Daytona Prototype. Now the field is on track. As you saw a moment ago, we had a little problem with getting the ball pointed in the right direction, but it appears that the field of nearly 55 cars is getting ready to go. And as they do, let's go up top. We'll start the race with the man who'll be on the mic for the entire Grand American Rolex Sports Car season, Lee Diffie, and expert commentators David Hobbs and former Rolex 24 winner Dorsey Schroeder. Gentlemen.
Thanks, Bob, and good afternoon to you. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, as you well know, Bob, to get through this 15.5 hours of live coverage here on Speed, you need plenty of stats and plenty of stories, and these two gentlemen beside me have in excess of 20 starts here at the Rolex 24 here at Daytona, and this man here, David Hobbs, started in the very first one back in '62. Let's have a look at how they will line up here today at Daytona International Speedway, and with a new qualifying lap record, it is the Lexus Riley, and Scott Pruitt did a marvelous job for Chip Ganassi Racing. In fact, that front row is blocked out with the Riley chassis cars. Fantastic effort from them, and the reigning DP champion, Terry Borchella, starts from 3. We look back at the second page, and the 5 times Rolex winner, Hurley Hayward, yep, he's going for number 6. He is in that top 10 starting from position 9. The GT pole sitter, Johannes van Overbeek, will start from position 16 in the newly formed Flying Lizard Racing Porsche. Then we go back. You see the second of the PTG BMWs there, Nick Johnson driving the 22 machine. And our newly formed class, the SGS class, 28 position is our pole sitter, Randy Popes. We're going to take you through all 53 starters, and David Hobbs, speaking of 53 cars out on this track, traffic will be an issue.
Traffic is going to be a huge issue, and I've never, in all my years of long distance racing, over 40 now, seen such a close grid. 14 cars covered by just 2.5 seconds at the top end of the field. If they all hang together, this block could move through this track all the time. Look at the track. Looks pretty simple, but turns 1 and 2. 2 really tightens up to a nice little right-left kink. Turn 3, you have no camber to help you. Dust picks up really quickly there from the sand. 4 is a very fast left-hander, especially in the dark when you can't see too well. 5 is tight. 6 goes in real tight, and it unwinds as you go up onto the banking and go around NASCAR's 1 and 2. Down to the chicane, about 190 mile an hour as you get there. And 8, on the exit of 8, you've got to be very careful because the dust builds up near the wall.
Right at the top of the show, you heard Bob mention that weather is an issue. It's hardly a pretty picture here at Daytona International Speedway. It's cool, and there is a huge threat of rain. 80% chance of rain, Dorsey, and that's playing on the minds of these competitors.
Yeah, that's what everyone does not want, but it looks like it's going to happen. And take a look at the Porsche keys to the race here. Weather on top, we'll talk about that. Durability, of course, in this division. These new Daytona prototypes are brand new. They're not tested yet. Pit stops have to work smoothly. Traffic is the #1 concern. Can you make it through this race without body contact in possibly the rain?
That's going to really make, if it does rain, of course, body contact becomes that much more crucial.
And we'd like to thank our friends at Porsche for bringing us this first hour of racing with limited commercial breaks, limited interruptions, and we thank them for that. Immediate news from the ground. We understand the number 11 Ferrari has been taken behind the pit wall. Early problems for them, and that's certainly a case in endurance racing. And the 41, the Planet Earth Motorsports Porsche, the Nonamakers, they're in trouble early as well. One of the new class cars, the SGS cars, and their day has begun not how they would have liked it to. Working our way towards the green, and we're very honoured to have Sir Sterling Moss as our Grand Marshal for the 42nd running of the Rolex 24 here at Daytona. An old friend of yours, I know you've seen him a few times this week.
Absolutely. Doesn't look a lot different, looking a little bit older, and of course he and I are two of the only people on the ground who did the very first race here back in 1962, and I can remember him strutting around. Of course, he won the class in a Ferrari GT250, a beautiful car.
Well, we're going to show you some of our onboard shots, and there's plenty to talk about with these new cars. There's some fabulous looking cars, the 2 Howard Boss Crawford Chevrolets. They are marvelous looking cars. The BMWs are back, Tom Milner and his PTG BMWs, and here we go. We are underway with the 42nd running of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Scott Pruitt leads him into the field, and already a pass down into turn 1. And it's Terry Borchella, the reigning Daytona prototype champion, who's not hanging around.
Oh my gosh, don't win the race on the first corner, everybody says, and Terry Borchella went down the inside there. This is that nasty little right-left kink as you come out of that turn 1 and 2 complex down to the International Horseshoe. 180-degree corner. long, easy enough corner, but they all hug the apex, and as the race goes on, they kick up a tremendous amount of sand.
Bad news with that aggressive move at the beginning was he made contact with 2 different cars already before he even got to turn 1, so that's not the way you start out. I'm sure his heart rate was very high right now.
Forcella is aggressive, and he doesn't want to sit around. We saw that many times last year. His weekend has got off to a great start. He's already won the Grand Am Cup race yesterday, and spirits are high.
Well, they've got to be. These Daytona prototypes, as I said, they're all very evenly matched. We've had a very short time limit over the top 14 cars. We've got about 3 seconds, which really for this type of racing is absolutely extraordinary.
There it is, the Bell Motorsports Pontiac-powered Doran, the reigning champion.
6 prototypes on the grid, triple the field in the DP class a year ago. Now, mechanical diversity has always been a hallmark of sports car racing, and the Daytona prototype class this year has no fewer than 6 different engine brands represented from the U.S., Japan, and Europe. We also have some new killer teams like Chip Ganassi Racing with IndyCar star and champion Scott Dixon joining former winners Max Pappas and Scott Pruitt. We have a crew of NASCAR Nextel Cup stars on hand. Robbie Gordon has won the Rolex 24 before. Kyle Petty will make his 5th start. Jimmy Johnson is a rookie, but has Elliott Forbes Robinson as a mentor. Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Tony Stewart have also raced here before. They'll be together on a very, very strong Daytona prototype team. Last year may have been the first year for Daytona prototypes, but it produced a great rivalry. David Donahue and Didier Taze banged doors all season long. Donahue said he's not going to stand for it this year. Well, the season is about to get underway, and we will see. I mentioned Chip Ganassi's powerhouse new team. They will start from pole in their Grand American Rolex sports car debut. Let's meet one of their drivers in the pit lane with Calvin Fish.
Well, Bob, as you mentioned, one of the big announcements during the off-season was the addition of Chip Ganassi Racing to the prototype ranks. They've made an immediate impression here. Scott Pruitt putting the car on the pole. He'll lead the field to green here this afternoon. But a stellar driver lineup. Mexican Jimmy Morales. He's won numerous championships down south of the border. He'll be joined by none other than IRL champion Scott Dixon, turning right for the first time in a couple of years. But no one will forget this man at Daytona, Mad Max Pappas. You came so close in '96. Really wrote your business card that year. Came back to win it 2 years ago. Give us your feelings as this long day ahead approaches.
But I'm really proud to be here, represent Chip Ganassi Racing. We are doing an amazing job starting from pole position. And with Wayne Taylor on the side, reminds me in the 1996 days when we had the Taylor-Pappas battle, so it's really good.
All right, Max, good luck this afternoon. A long day ahead for these boys, Bob.
That there is, Calvin. Mad Max Pappas made his name here in American racing at the Rolex 24, and he hopes to come back and win it again this year. Now, I mentioned we have 3 classes in the event, the Daytona prototypes. Now let's meet the second of those classes, the one that produced last year's historic overall winner, the GT category. Last year, it was a beautifully sorted and run 911 from the Racers group that won, but this year they suffered misfortune en route to Daytona, a transporter fire, and more once they got here. We'll talk about that in just a moment. BMW is back with the Prototype Technology Group and a terrific driver lineup led by Bill Auberlin and Big Bad Boris Said. And for